being high on meth is like being on fire from the inside out.
Being high on meth is like nothing else I've ever felt. It's good and bad all at once. It's pure bliss and joy, and you feel more free than you ever have, and at the same time you feel more scared than you ever have.
That starts stirring in you, and then it's so overwhelming and euphoric that you can feel, people describe it as dragon breath, but it feels like you're just breathing fire and ice out just all at once.
For me, it instantly took my breath away the minute I put the needle in my arm.
In 2015, police discovered more than 230 meth labs in Delaware County. That's more than any other county in the state.
You know, I spent a lot of my life with this mask on saying, I'm okay, I'm all right. And it was pretend. I wasn't okay and I wasn't all right.
An anonymous tip led police to a meth lab and to arrest 2 people today.
So I've seen it in rural areas, I've seen it in urban areas, I've seen it in all areas. They disguise themselves, they try to fit in. I've seen it in hotel rooms.
The most concern for me in our community is it's destroying families.
I think it's important to talk about addictions because there's a stigma that says these people are bad.
Police found more than $150,000 worth of meth in his car.
You know, I know drug addiction is an ugly thing, and it brings ugly stuff with it, but there's still always hope for people.
I couldn't even tell you how many times I lost everything I'd owned. Clothes, including down to the shoes I had on. You know, I've lost it all because of my addiction.
I did not care about anything. I've stood in front of dope dealers with pistols to my head and said, go ahead and shoot me. Do me a favor. If you think you got it in you and if you think God will allow you to kill me, go ahead, because I really don't give a damn. Whatever it took to get my next hit, I did it.
I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be sitting here doing an interview with you. I should either be dead or locked up. And I fully expected to be.
When I heard the cell door shut and I was in a cell in jail, I knew at that point there was no more shred of denying it. I was an addict and I had a problem.
And that problem extends beyond each individual addict. It impacts an entire community. In 2015, Delaware County led the state in the sheer number of meth labs busted. Methamphetamine's ripple effect is felt from neighborhoods to hospitals to churches to City Hall.
We noticed the meth issues starting to rise here in the city of Muncie somewhere in 2012 and 2013. And it seems like it's continuing to escalate, not just in Muncie, but throughout the state of Indiana.
The heat map of activity really pops out in Delaware County. Way more. Now I'm even more freaked out about how much seems to be out there.
I've been here 30 years, and I can remember when I never had a meth case all year, okay? But about 06, 08, we started to start seeing meth again in Delaware County.
Perception is reality, right? So when you're driving by these neighborhoods, you see some pretty crappy, run-down, not cared for kinds of areas. And it's frustrating. You don't know what it's really coming from. I'm sure part of it's meth.
Everybody wants to control or solve the meth problem in Indiana, but it's not an easy fix.
In order to even begin finding a solution to a problem, you must first understand that problem. Each case of addiction is personal and intimate. So to understand the disease, it is crucial to take the time to listen to those who have been most affected, addicts themselves.
I've lived in Muncie for 15 years, something like that.
I have been in Muncie off and on all of my life. My family roots are from Muncie.
I've lived here 35 years.
For about 4 years now.
I had a good childhood in that I had a good support system.
I grew up in filth and poverty. I mean, we were really poor. I had a single mother who loved us and took care of us as well as she could.
I was spoiled. My parents gave me everything I wanted. I had a really good childhood.
My brother was very abusive in ways that no child should have to ever be abused.
After working on some steps, I kind of feel that there was some kind of disconnect with me and people around me socially. I didn't feel okay.
I had been raised to be reserved, and I didn't want to be reserved. I wanted to be the beautiful, get all the attention girl, and that didn't come naturally.
For a very long time, I would say for about a period of 4 years, 5 years, it didn't really affect my ability to work. It didn't so much affect my relationship with family. It was something that I kept, private, or I kept away from them. My circle of friends knew that I smoked marijuana. My circle of friends knew that I drank because they were doing it with me. My family, I kept that separate.
I was a casual user. I didn't consider myself an addict for a very long time, just every other weekend, or I was a singer in a rock band, so I was introduced to a lot of different things doing that.
I was usually part of the in crowd, but I never felt really comfortable in my own skin. I found that using kind of lubricated that. It made it easier. I seemed to be able to communicate with other people easier and get them to laugh, and I felt like I was more of the life of the party. So I think that's kind of what got me involved in it. So I got into a little bit of legal trouble, and they put you on probation and they start drug testing you. Never really spent any time in jail at that point, but I couldn't smoke marijuana anymore. So I had to find something to replace that with. At least I thought I did, and that slowly started with the harder drugs. And first it was hallucinogens, and then later, a couple years later, it was cocaine.
My mom died 7 years ago. When she died, she was my cushion. She was my buffer, I guess I would say, in life, where, if something went wrong or was bad, I could call her and everything just seemed better. And when she died, I didn't have that anymore.
So I went to college. I was like, hey, I gotta get enrolled in college. I gotta do something with my life. And so I did, and I did really well. And I went from making maybe $8,000 a year to making well over $50,000 a year. And what does a person do with all that extra money?
When I was in a very abusive relationship with my ex-husband at the time, and, he was a drug addict, and, it just was horrible. And I ended up leaving him and kind of went buck wild.
I began to use cocaine on the weekends, and then I started using it every day. And then I lost my job because I was using it at work.
At first, it just was fun. For a very short, limited time, it was fun. And then it turned into a living nightmare.
I had to use crystal meth. And what we've got going around, in Muncie and the epidemic that is shake and bake or one pot methamphetamine is different.
When I was about 22 is the first time I shot meth. I fell in love with it. I could be super mom, super woman. I could do all these things and still have all this energy to do a lot more.
I found that after I smoked it or snorted it, after a period of 3 to 4 days, I started to get this euphoric feeling that I wasn't getting with cocaine. It was even more intense.
When I did meth, I felt happy. Every sense in you, your whole body, every bit of you feels this euphoric feeling of complete bliss and happiness.
When I first tried shooting methamphetamine, it was over. It was over. There's nothing to compare it to. Today, I feel like when I pulled the plunger back on that needle, that it just pulled at the fabric of my soul, man. It just pulled it out.
You don't care when you're a drug addict, If it gets you high, you're gonna do it.
Well, namely, number one, to support my addiction was manufacturing it. That's, again, one of the problems that we're finding. I believe that the community is going to, if they don't understand now, they should, or should be finding out, is that it is very easy to make. It doesn't take, a chemist to make methamphetamine, regardless of what the TV shows will tell you. It really just takes an addict that needs to get high.
I'd go to Indianapolis, I'd go to stores, I'd steal clothes for my dope man, I would steal Bluetooth speakers, anything electronic.
Anything I had, I would sell. I never sold myself, except for my soul, pretty much, when I was doing meth.
Cameras, I've stolen from my family. I hate to say it, but I've even stolen from my son.
The way the culture works is that another addict that's using that same drug, using methamphetamine, and that doesn't have any money, is willing to say, hey, I'll get you this, and you make it, and you give me this.
What happens is, let's say that I have a friend who is maybe a user, but not a huge user. He doesn't know how to cook meth, okay? But I've run out of the number of pseudoephedrine boxes that I can buy legally within a year. So I tell him, hey, you go buy me some pseudoephedrine, bring it back. I'll get the other ingredients, I'll teach you how to cook meth. That's called a Smurf, who goes out and gets your pseudoephedrine for you.
And I started using a needle, and that changed everything. The minute I put a needle in my arm is the minute that I lost every bit of control that I thought I had in my life. It was gone. And I started losing everything around me, from my friends to the people that I've known my whole life. I didn't talk to them anymore. I isolated myself, I was looking out the blinds all the time and, just paranoid and scared and hallucinating, and it was absolutely a living nightmare that I felt like I couldn't get out of. I was trapped. And, you're not drinking, you're not hydrating yourself, you're not eating. I went from 190 pounds to 105 pounds in about less than a year. It was quick. I looked like I had cancer by the end of it, so it was bad.
Didn't feel good about myself unless I was under the influence of something. I didn't feel I had any worth. I was depressed and really tried to commit suicide several times when I wasn't using.
Being up for days and it'd wear and tear on my body really bad. And then once I didn't have it, I'd crash and fall hard.
And methamphetamine is basically a stimulant and long-acting, so you will stay up for days at a time. Not getting sleep causes paranoia, delusions, hallucinations. After using it for a long time, you will actually, you lose a lot of weight. Young people lose their teeth because the methamphetamine dries out the mucous membranes, and you get poor oral hygiene. Patients will have making it what's called formication, which you get itchy skin or bugs under the skin, so they're always scratching, so they have a lot of welts, blisters, and scabs all throughout the body.
I was using every day, and I was no longer using it recreationally or socially. It was I had to have it all the time or I couldn't function.
I was the guy who would just not stop. The party was over, everybody had left, but I was still there.
It stopped being fun when my kids started noticing that there was something wrong with me. I hid things very well from my kids, but when I was freaking out, thinking there was something outside, and they were like, Mom, there's nothing there. And then seeing their faces in confusion, that's when it really stopped being fun. It stopped being fun when we didn't have water or electric and didn't have food in our house, and didn't care that we didn't have those things. It stopped being fun when I felt like I'd lost me completely, and there was not even a shred of what I used to be left. That's when it stopped being fun.
When I truly admitted to myself that I was an addict, was after my last relapse, the end of it, where I was arrested. And I was in that jail cell, and I'd been in jail frequently, over the course of before all this had happened. And I always made those same promises everybody does when they first go to jail. I'll never do that again. And This time was a lot different. Every other time I'd had money to, hire a lawyer, get me out. I'd had family that was there to support me. I'd had, all those things, just the worldly things that help people get out of trouble when they don't need to be getting out of trouble. And man, I finally, after 3 days, the meanest guard you could imagine, or who I'd always thought was, I'd asked if I could get something to read, and she brought me a Bible. And for the next, I would say 2.5 weeks, man, I poured my heart out in that cell. I never cried like that in my life. It just would not stop. It came out, man, all the guilt and the shame and all the things I'd done in my life, not just in my life, but in that course of use from 16 to 33, it all hit at once.
I spent 30 days in jail the first time I went to jail. I got out after 31 days. Thought I had it licked, I've been clean 31 days. I got this, Went to a few meetings. Unfortunately, I had people coming around that probably shouldn't have been, definitely shouldn't have been, who were still actively using. It's the first rule. People, places, playgrounds, you got to change them all. If you don't, you're going to be sucked back in. And there is no if you're going to be sucked back in, you're going to be. And I just was sad. Brian was in jail, and I felt alone, and it's no excuse, but that's, isolation, loneliness. Those are the keys to, if you isolate yourself, you're gonna want to use. Your disease is going to talk to you in your ear, and it'll talk you right into it, and you become powerless again once you use that first time. So yeah, I relapsed, and I was on house arrest at the time, so of course I had I failed a drug screen, and then I failed another one, right in a row.
And then I, decided, hey, I need to take this to the next level. I know that I believe in a higher power. I had known my entire life. I just chose to push it away. I chose to push Christ away in my life and run and say, hey, I got this. I can try this on my own. I think I can do it. I don't need you. And that led me down a really dark path. And so I decided I was going to go out to this program called Reformers Unanimous.
Talking to my daughters on the phone from jail was probably one of the most painful things I've ever had to do. To hear my daughters cry for me on the phone and to feel all that guilt and knowing what I did not only to myself but to my kids was when I knew I had to do something different. I was gonna die if not. I was already dead inside, but I was gonna physically die if I didn't stop.
And I kept saying, I'm not trying to stop meth. I'm trying to stop meth labs. And I'm trying to stop meth labs because of the children that we find in meth homes and the damage to those homes.
If there's children present and it's in a rental property, the children are exposed to a hazard that they may suffer respiratory problems for the rest of their life.
But it's all over our community. We see it, neighbors, we find mobile meth labs in our alleys, and we see needles all over our neighborhood.
We used to have these neighbors that looked out for the houses, and everybody was really kind to see every day, and now you see them houses empty, and it's really sad.
It's a rental. The landlord can't afford the thousands of dollars that it takes to clean up a meth house, so they just walk away from it. It goes off the tax rolls, it becomes a blighted house.
$31.2 million a year was a number IDEM pegged for the cost to homeowners for cleaning up the mess. $1.87 billion is the overall cost to our society on an annual basis that Indiana University puts on it.
That neighbor moved out, now somebody moved in there, but essentially this house is kind of vacant. I wish more people were living here and, feel like a community.
The stories online, it's not good. It's not good for our community, that's for sure. Unfortunately, there's way more negative stories than there are good stories.
I see in the paper every day, people who get arrested and people who are at their worst moment in their life. But I don't see the stories of recovery. I don't see the successes advertised or put on the front page. For me, that's sad. We're promoting that that's all there is. You know, we're telling people that it's not possible because look, everybody keeps failing. Same people in the paper, you know, I've seen this person before, or, you know, recovery is possible, and it's huge in Muncie right now. There is so many recovering addicts in Muncie that are strong together that no one knows anything about.
So in Narcotics Anonymous, I found a fellowship of people, like-minded people that understand where I'd been, understood where I wanted to go, and loved me unconditionally.
Things that I held on to from 5 years old, you know, memories and nightmares and having night terrors and just going through all the hell that I went through when I was younger. To be able to feel free of that and feel a peace inside of myself that I've never felt before is pretty amazing.
I have never felt that kind of freedom, you know. I was happy. I was like, look, I know what direction I gotta go now. And I don't have to carry all this stuff with me anymore. I don't have to fight anymore. I don't have to use drugs anymore. And I haven't since.
You know, I spent a lot of my life with this mask on saying, I'm okay, I'm all right. And it was pretend. I wasn't okay and I wasn't all right, and I just kept pretending I was, which led me down a dark road where I ended up. And now I can actually say I'm okay, I'm all right, and it's real, it's genuine.
Today I live with two people, you know what I mean? I live with the active addict that's trying to talk to me. That voice has been dulled and it's been softened. And I live with the person who's in recovery. And if I feed that person, then it's gonna become louder and louder and louder. And the likelihood is that I'm gonna stay in recovery.
I thought I would always be sad, upset, and feel like I wasn't good enough for anybody, let alone myself, and that I could never get it right. And I realized I don't have to get it right all the time, as long as I keep trying and I keep doing what's right, and I'll be okay.
It dawned on me while I was locked up and I was in the Word that, hey, I have been a horrible parent. I mean, horrible. You know, I loved my daughter. I absolutely loved her, but when I was using, I loved drugs more. And that's really hard to admit, but it's the truth. I regret a lot of that. I missed a lot of my daughter's life that way. You know, thankfully, you know, that relationship is pretty awesome today. You know, those fears that are creeping in your mind when you're locked up was like, my daughter will never talk to me again. She's gonna hate me and never forgive me, and that was not the case. She's amazing.
Now, my daughters are so proud of us. I mean, they think we're amazing. I think they're pretty amazing, but I'm a little partial on their mom. But, you know, they've watched our struggle, and they've watched Brian and I, you know, come from the depths of hell, literally, to having an actual normal grown-up life. I mean, wow, it's kind of amazing to be responsible and have your kids and a home and, you know, get married. And all of that happened, you know, because we made the choice to surrender and stop using drugs, surrender our will and our life over to a higher power. You know, we're very, you know, we believe in God. We're faith-believing people, and He's healed a lot of things in us that we never would have imagined would be healed.
Funny thing is, as addicts, we want all these things back in our lives. We want a job, we want our kids back, and then we get it all back, and we're like, whoa, what am I gonna do with all this? How do I maintain this?
You know, I work as hard at being clean as I did getting messed up. That's the key. I have to put as much into my recovery as I put into my active addiction.
I wish at the front end of Google searches, there's all the proactive, good stuff that's happening with getting it under control, because I really do think it's getting better.
I think if our community can see that people can get better and that they are willing to change, and then they're willing to turn around and help others, then maybe they'll, even though they're not touched by it maybe, or they've never been an addict, maybe they'll be part of that process instead of shunning away.
We've got to create a culture we can start in our small communities of fun without alcohol, fun without drugs. Again, there's got to be dialogue about, you know, these things are a problem. This stuff is real. It does cause destruction in people's lives. It's not just lions and tigers and bears, oh my.
People need a real support system, and there needs to be some kind of rehabilitation in Muncie.
As soon as they get out of jail, they go to a rehab center. We're going to help them cut that we're going to help them cut that drug addiction that they have. During this time, we need to start, trying to get their education, get them with a job skill trade, hopefully get them a job, teach them how to handle a checkbook, how to use their money wisely. And all this is just going to help them out become a better and productive citizen. So eventually, when they graduate all these programs, then we can get them an apartment outside of a rehab center, and they'll be able to maintain themselves socially and economically and become a productive citizen.
At first, I came up with the idea of make music, not meth, and everybody was a little freaked out about the idea. And then eventually people kind of realized, well, maybe it does need said. Maybe it's the elephant in the room that we don't need to not say. That if the community digs in, that, there is change, and we're the ones that we've been waiting for. There's nobody coming to save us. We got to do it.
Until the cycle is broken, until there's more help available and people see it as a disease and not just a criminal, it's not going to change. And it's only going to get worse, whether it's heroin, meth, whatever it is.
We feel as if the bottom line is, with Jesus, all things are possible. And we feel like once you come to understand that and you are willing to accept that, your life, Jesus is the one who's going to grow you, and you will recover things that you may have lost in the past, but with Jesus, there is going to be growth and recovery involved.
Compassion is the key. I mean, the judgments and the stigma and the harshness that some people treat someone that's trying to get better, I think, is what stops that process from happening sometimes. The whole point of recovering is that you can't isolate and you can't keep the secret anymore. But when people don't talk about it and they sweep it under the rug, it's not helping the problem. It's just escalating it. We have to bring it out in the open. We have to make it right there, raw, and for everyone to see so they can understand.
And I know drug addiction is an ugly thing, and it brings ugly stuff with it, but there's still always hope for people.